January 1943. Before dawn, the Pacific is deceptively calm. Low swells brush against the steel hulls of Japanese transport ships moving south through the Bismarck Sea. The air smells of diesel fuel and salt. On the bridge, officers scan the horizon through binoculars, expecting aircraft, destroyers, anything visible. Below the surface, unseen, American submarines wait in silence. The only sound is the slow ticking of depth gauges and the steady hum of electric motors. Then, without warning, the ocean itself seems to strike. This moment mattered because by 1943, the war in the Pacific had entered a brutal phase of logistics and endurance. Japan's empire stretched across thousands of miles of ocean, from the home islands to New Guinea, the Philippines, and the Dutch East Indies. Every rifle, every sack of rice, every gallon of fuel had to cross water. Japanese commanders believed the sea lanes, guarded by tradition, skill, and spirit, would remain open. Submarines, in Japanese naval doctrine, were seen as auxiliary weapons, tools to attack warships, not supply lines. America thought differently. From Pearl Harbor onward, U.S. naval planners identified Japan's merchant fleet as the empire's bloodstream. Cut it, and the body would weaken. Japanese officers expected a familiar contest. They anticipated surface engagements, carrier battles, decisive clashes that matched the ideals taught at the Naval War College in Etajima. What they experienced instead was relentless, impersonal destruction. American submarines did not seek glory, they hunted schedules. They studied convoy routes, choke points, and tidal patterns. By 1943, U.S. subs were appearing with terrifying regularity along major shipping lanes, off Truk, around the Philippines, through the South China Sea. To Japanese commanders, it felt as if the ocean itself had become hostile.
The historical record is precise and unforgiving. In 1942, American submarines struggled with faulty torpedoes and cautious doctrine. By mid-1943, those problems were largely resolved. The Mark 14 torpedo began detonating properly. Aggressive commanders like Dudley "Mush" Morton and Charles Lockwood pushed new tactics. According to U.S. Navy records, American submarines sank approximately 1.5 million tons of Japanese shipping in 1943 alone. The number would rise to over 3 million tons in 1944. Japanese convoy losses became so frequent that reports used the word nichicho, daily. Japanese commanders expected courage and discipline to protect their convoys. What they faced was industrial persistence. American submarines were not isolated hunters. They were products of an enormous system. Each boat carried advanced radar, reliable radios, and well-trained crews rotated and reinforced by a vast training pipeline. When one submarine returned to base, another took its place. The symbolic object of this campaign was food: rice, canned goods, ammunition crates, floating briefly on the surface after a torpedo strike before sinking into darkness. Each crate represented miles of ocean crossed and now denied. Documents from the Japanese Naval General Staff reveal growing alarm. In a 1943 internal assessment, Japanese officers acknowledged that merchant losses were gravely affecting operations in southern areas. Yet escorts remained insufficient. Destroyers were needed elsewhere. Air patrols lacked fuel. Even when convoys were protected, American submarines adapted. Night surface attacks, radar-guided approaches, coordinated wolf-pack tactics borrowed and refined from Atlantic experience. Emotionally, the shock lay in the contrast between expectation and reality. Japanese naval culture emphasized decisive battle and visible honor. Submarine warfare offered none of that. There was no warning shot, no exchange of salutes, no chance for heroic maneuver. A transport could sail for days without incident, then vanish in minutes. Survivors clung to wreckage, watching supplies meant for entire divisions sink beyond reach. American abundance was not only in the number of submarines, but in the certainty that another convoy would be hunted tomorrow. Transformation followed quietly but profoundly. Japanese commanders began to realize that bravery could not replace fuel, and ideology could not replace steel. Diaries from officers stationed in Rabaul and Manila describe growing helplessness. One logistics officer noted that, even when men arrive, they arrive hungry. The symbolic presence of food, its absence, became central. Rice rations shrank. Units fought on reduced diets. Aircraft were grounded not by enemy fire, but by empty tanks. Meanwhile, American submariners saw the campaign differently. Patrol reports were methodical, almost cold. Tonnage sunk, positions logged, torpedoes expended. Behind those reports stood an economy capable of replacing every torpedo fired, every submarine damaged. Democracy's abundance manifested not as excess, but as continuity. The campaign did not rely on single victories, it relied on repetition. By late 1944, the effects were undeniable. Japan had lost over half its merchant fleet. Shipbuilding could not keep pace. Oil from the Dutch East Indies could no longer reach the home islands in sufficient quantities. Japanese commanders, once confident in imperial reach, now planned operations knowing resupply might never come. The daily ambushes had reshaped strategy without a single dramatic announcement. The symbolism of food returns again and again in survivor accounts. Sailors remembered crates breaking open, rice spilling into seawater, white grains dissolving as they sank. It was abundance turned unreachable. For American planners, denying that food was a strategic calculation. For Japanese soldiers, it became a lived reality, altering morale and belief. In the epilogue of this story, the Pacific grows quiet again. The submarines surface at war's end, their hulls scarred, their patrol flags heavy with markings. The convoys they hunted are gone. What remains is a larger truth about modern war and ideology. Freedom and democracy in this conflict did not speak loudly through words alone. They spoke through systems, through factories, logistics, and the ability to sustain pressure day after day. In the depths of the Pacific, where Japanese commanders once expected honor to decide fate, they instead encountered an unyielding tide of abundance. And it was there, beneath the waves, that the empire's certainty quietly drowned.